Captain Damon Williams had been traveling through space for 2 whole years, searching every planet and every star system he could find. His ship was old and beaten up from all the jumping between worlds, but he never gave up hope. He was looking for someone very special, his wife, Queen Nyla, who had vanished without a trace during a diplomatic mission. When Damon's ship finally landed on the crystal planet of Valeria, his hands were shaking with excitement. The guards at the palace gates looked surprised to see a human requesting an audience with their queen, but his credentials as a former ambassador got him through. As he walked down the long hallway toward the throne room, his heart was beating so fast he thought it might burst. The massive doors opened, and there she was. Queen Nyla sat on her throne made of living light, just as beautiful as the day she disappeared. Her dark skin glowed with the natural patterns that made her people so unique, and her amber eyes were as striking as ever. Damon felt tears forming in his eyes. After all this time searching, he had finally found her. Nyla, he called out, his voice echoing through the enormous room. He started walking toward her, but the guards immediately stepped in his way. The queen looked at him with a blank expression that made his stomach drop. "You dare address your queen by name, human? Who are you to speak so casually?" Damon felt like someone had punched him in the gut. This was not the greeting he had imagined during all those lonely nights in space. "It's me, Damon. Your husband. I've been searching for you everywhere." Queen Nyla's eyes widened in what looked like genuine confusion. She leaned forward on her throne, studying his face carefully. "Husband? That's impossible. I have never married anyone, especially not a human. Are you suffering from some kind of mental illness?" The guards started moving closer, their energy weapons humming to life. Damon raised his hands to show he meant no harm, but his mind was racing. How could she not remember him? They had been married for 3 years before she disappeared. They had shared everything together. "Wait, please," Damon said desperately. He reached into his jacket pocket, moving slowly so the guards wouldn't think he was going for a weapon. "I can prove it." He pulled out a small ring that immediately began glowing with soft blue light. The moment it appeared, everyone in the throne room gasped. Even Queen Nyla stood up from her throne, her eyes fixed on the ring. "This is our wedding ring," Damon said, holding it up for everyone to see. "It was forged in the sacred fires of your homeworld, blessed by your priests, and bonded to both our life forces. Only married couples can create these rings, and they're impossible to fake." The queen descended from her throne, moving closer to get a better look. The ring was definitely real. Its energy patterns matched the ancient Valerian technology perfectly. But she had no memory of ever participating in such a ceremony. "I don't understand," she whispered, her confident royal voice becoming uncertain for the first time. "This ring is genuine, I can sense that. But I would remember taking a husband. Such an event would be recorded in all our histories." Damon's hopes began to crumble. Something was terribly wrong here. His Nyla had been warm and loving, always ready with a smile or a laugh. This woman looked exactly like her, but she was cold and distant like a stranger. "Check your records then," Damon pleaded. "Look for any mention of our marriage, our meetings, anything about our relationship." Queen Nyla signaled to one of her advisors, who quickly began scanning through the palace databases on his portable device. After several minutes of searching, he shook his head. "My queen, there are no records of any marriage ceremony. In fact, according to our files, you have always maintained that romantic relationships between species are impossible and impractical." Damon felt the world spinning around him. The woman he loved was standing right in front of him, but she was acting like they had never met before. Either someone had erased her memories, or something even stranger was happening. "I don't care what your records say," Damon said firmly. "I know what I remember. We fell in love during the peace negotiations between our peoples. You taught me about your culture, and I showed you what made humans special. We got married in secret because we knew some people wouldn't understand." Queen Nyla stared at him for a long moment, then looked back at the glowing ring. "Guards, escort this man to comfortable quarters. I want our best scientists to examine both him and this ring. Something very strange is happening here, and I intend to find out what it is." As the guards led Damon away, he called back to her. "Nyla, please try to remember. I know you're in there somewhere." But the queen just watched him go, her expression unreadable, the mysterious ring still glowing in the space between them. 3 days had passed since Damon's shocking arrival at the palace. Dr. Keisha Robinson, the brilliant scientist who had traveled with him across the galaxy, was finally allowed to visit him in his detention quarters. The room was comfortable enough, with Valerian technology providing everything he needed, but it still felt like a prison. Queen Nyla watched their conversation through the palace's advanced monitoring system from her private study. She had barely slept since seeing that ring, and questions kept spinning through her mind like a storm that wouldn't end. "Tell me everything again," Keisha said gently, sitting across from Damon at the simple metal table where the ring now lay between them. "But this time, I want you to activate the ring's memory storage. Let's see what it can show us." Damon nodded and carefully touched the ring's surface. Immediately, the air above the table shimmered and came alive with three-dimensional images that looked as real as if they were happening right in front of them. The first scene showed a younger version of Queen Nyla laughing at something Damon had said during what appeared to be a formal dinner. "That was our first date," Damon explained, his voice soft with emotion. "She had never tried human food before, and I brought her chocolate cake. She laughed so hard when she tasted it that she snorted, which made her embarrassed because queens aren't supposed to snort." In her study, Queen Nyla leaned forward, studying the woman in the hologram who looked exactly like her. But this other version of herself seemed so different. She was relaxed, playful, and her eyes sparkled with warmth and humor. The current queen had never acted that way with anyone. The images continued changing, showing more scenes from their relationship. There was Nyla teaching Damon traditional Valerian dances under the light of two moons, both of them stumbling and laughing when he couldn't keep up with the complex steps. Another scene showed them having a serious conversation about bringing their two species together in peace, their hands intertwined as they planned a better future. "This is impossible," Queen Nyla whispered to herself, but she couldn't look away from the projections. The most stunning image appeared next, their wedding ceremony. Damon and Nyla stood before both human and Valerian priests, exchanging vows in a mixture of both languages. The Nyla in the memory was crying tears of joy as she placed the glowing ring on Damon's finger, and he did the same for her. "I remember every word she said that day," Damon told Keisha. "She promised to bridge the gap between our worlds, to prove that love could exist anywhere in the universe, no matter how different two people might seem." Dr. Keisha was scanning the holographic images with her portable analyzer, and what she found made her sit back in shock. "Damon, these quantum signatures are completely wrong." "What do you mean wrong?" "Every object, every person, every place in this universe has a unique quantum fingerprint, like a cosmic DNA that identifies which reality it belongs to. But these memories, they don't match our universe's baseline readings at all." In her study, Queen Nyla called for her chief science advisor immediately. Within minutes, Commander Blake Thompson arrived, a tall man with kind eyes who had served the royal family for decades. "Blake, I need you to analyze something for me," the Queen said, forwarding him the quantum readings from Keisha's scanner. Blake studied the data carefully, his expression growing more troubled with each passing moment. "My Queen, if these readings are accurate, then these memories come from a parallel dimension, a completely different version of our universe where events unfolded differently." "How differently?" she asked. "According to historical records embedded in these memory fragments, your alternate self chose cooperation over conquest. Instead of expanding the Valerian Empire through military force, that version of you worked with other species as equals. The humans in that reality were treated as partners, not subjects." Queen Nyla felt a strange pain in her chest. In this reality, she had built her empire through strength and dominance. She had always believed it was the only way to bring order to the galaxy. But seeing these memories of another version of herself who had chosen love over fear made her question everything. Back in the detention quarters, more memories were playing out. This time, they showed Nyla and Damon working together to establish trade agreements and cultural exchange programs between their peoples. The other Nyla spoke passionately about understanding and respecting differences rather than eliminating them. "She's so different from your queen," Keisha observed quietly. "No," Damon said, shaking his head. "She's not different. This is who Nyla really is, deep down. This is who she could be if she wasn't so afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of being hurt. Of trusting someone and having them betray her. In my dimension, I helped her overcome those fears. But here, it looks like those fears won the battle." The memory projection flickered and changed one final time, showing Nyla and Damon saying goodbye before her fateful diplomatic mission. She kissed him tenderly and promised to return soon with good news about the peace negotiations. "That was the last time I saw her," Damon said, his voice breaking. "She vanished during that mission, and I've been searching ever since." Queen Nyla turned off the monitoring system and sat in silence, her mind reeling from everything she had witnessed. Somewhere in another reality, a version of herself had found love and happiness. The question now was whether that same possibility still existed in this world, or if it was too late to change the path she had chosen. A week had passed since the shocking discovery about the ring's memories, and the entire Valerian palace was buzzing with scientific activity. Queen Nyla had ordered her best researchers to work around the clock, trying to understand what they were dealing with. The implications were staggering. If parallel dimensions really existed, it would change everything they thought they knew about the universe. Commander Blake Thompson stood in the Royal Laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays showing complex mathematical equations that hurt to look at. His team of scientists had been running tests non-stop, and what they found was both fascinating and terrifying. "Your Majesty," Blake said as Queen Nyla entered the lab, "we've confirmed it beyond any doubt. Captain Williams is not from our reality." The Queen moved closer to examine the swirling data patterns. "Show me the evidence." Blake activated a three-dimensional map that showed the fabric of space-time itself, with glowing threads connecting different points. 3 months ago, our monitoring stations detected a massive quantum disturbance in the Nexus sector. We thought it was just a solar storm, but now we know better. It was a dimensional rift, a tear in reality itself. "And you believe the human ship passed through this rift?" "More than believe, Your Majesty. We have proof." Blake pulled up the flight records from Damon's ship. According to their navigation logs, they were exploring that exact sector when the disturbance occurred. The quantum radiation in their ship's hull matches the rift's energy signature perfectly. Queen Nyla studied the data carefully. She had always been gifted with mathematics and science, which was part of what made her such an effective ruler. If he's from another dimension, then why isn't he showing signs of quantum displacement sickness? Beings from other realities shouldn't be able to survive here for long. "That's what makes this case so unusual," Dr. Keisha Robinson said as she joined the conversation. She had been granted permission to work alongside the Valerian scientists. "Humans seem to be naturally resistant to quantum displacement. We think it's because of how our brains process reality. We're adaptable in ways that other species aren't." Meanwhile, in his quarters, Damon was experiencing something strange. Every few hours, he would get flashes of memories that didn't belong to him. He remembered arriving at the Valerian palace for the first time, but in these new memories, he was treated as a prisoner of war rather than an honored guest. He remembered Queen Nyla, but this version was cold and ruthless, nothing like the woman he had married. "These aren't my memories," he told Keisha during her next visit. "It's like my mind is picking up echoes from this dimension's version of events." Keisha nodded grimly. "We think that's exactly what's happening. The longer you stay here, the more your consciousness becomes entangled with this reality. You're starting to remember things that happened to this dimension's version of you." "There's another me here?" There was. According to the records Blake showed me, this dimension's Damon Williams was captured during a failed peace mission 2 years ago. He died in a Valerian prison, branded as a terrorist for trying to organize human resistance against the Empire. The news hit Damon like a physical blow. In this reality, he wasn't a beloved husband and ambassador, he was an enemy of the state who had died fighting against the woman he loved. Back in the laboratory, Queen Nyla was reviewing psychological profiles of both versions of herself. The differences were startling. Her alternate self from Damon's dimension had shown remarkable emotional intelligence and empathy from a young age. This version of Nyla had learned to suppress those same qualities, viewing them as weaknesses that could be exploited by enemies. "Blake, show me the analysis of the alternate timeline's historical divergence point," she commanded. A new hologram appeared, showing a timeline split that occurred 50 years ago. "It all comes down to one moment, Your Majesty. When you were a child, your parents were assassinated by human extremists who opposed first contact between our species." Queen Nyla remembered that day clearly, it had shaped everything about who she became. "And in the other dimension? In Captain Williams' reality, your parents survived that assassination attempt. They lived to guide you toward cooperation instead of conquest. That single moment changed the entire course of galactic history." The weight of this revelation was overwhelming. Queen Nyla realized that she and her alternate self had started as the same person, but one terrible day had sent them down completely different paths. One had learned to trust and love, while the other had learned to fear and dominate. "There's something else, Your Majesty," Blake said hesitantly. "The dimensional rift is still active, but it's becoming unstable. Our calculations show it will collapse completely within the next few days." "What does that mean for Captain Williams?" "If he doesn't return to his own dimension before the rift closes, he'll be trapped here forever. But there's a bigger problem. The quantum entanglement between the two realities is growing stronger. If it continues, both dimensions could collapse into each other, destroying everything in both universes. Queen Nyla felt a chill run down her spine. The fate of two entire realities might depend on what happened in the next few days. She looked at the wedding ring, which was still glowing softly in its containment field, and wondered if love really could be powerful enough to save two worlds. Double the research efforts, she ordered. I want to know everything about these dimensional rifts, and I want to know it now. As her scientists scrambled to obey, Queen Nyla couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out for everyone. The massive Valerian war fleet hung in space like deadly jewels against the black canvas of the universe. Hundreds of ships stretched as far as the eye could see, their crystal hulls gleaming with destructive power. At the center of this armada, Queen Nyla stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring at the blue marble that was Earth through the enormous viewing screen. Beautiful world, she murmured to herself, though her voice carried no warmth. It will make a fine addition to the Empire. This was supposed to be the moment of her greatest triumph. 4 years, she had planned this operation, the complete integration of humanity into the Valerian Empire. Not as equals, but as a client species who would serve under Valerian guidance. She told herself it was for their own good. Humans were too chaotic, too emotional to govern themselves properly. The bridge doors opened with a soft hiss, and guards brought in Captain Damon Williams. His hands were bound, but his eyes showed no fear as he looked around at the impressive command center. Queen Nyla had ordered him brought here to witness what she called humanity's elevation to a higher purpose. So this is how it ends, Damon said quietly, moving to stand beside her at the viewing screen. Not with cooperation or understanding, but with conquest. You speak as if this is a tragedy, Queen Nyla replied without looking at him. I'm offering your people order, stability, and protection under the greatest empire the galaxy has ever known. They should be grateful. And if they refuse? For the first time, she turned to meet his gaze. They won't be given that choice. This is what's best for them, whether they understand it or not. Damon studied her face carefully. Even now, after everything he had learned about this different version of his wife, he could still see traces of the woman he had fallen in love with. The way she held her shoulders when she was trying to convince herself she was doing the right thing. The slight tremor in her voice when she spoke about difficult decisions. In my dimension, you stood right here on a ship just like this one, he said softly. But instead of a conquest fleet, it was a diplomatic vessel. You were coming to Earth to sign a peace treaty that would make our species partners instead of master and servant. Queen Nyla's jaw tightened. That version of me was naive and foolish. No, she was brave. It takes real courage to choose trust over fear, especially when you've been hurt before. Before the Queen could respond, Dr. Keisha Robinson's voice crackled through the communication system from the science lab. Your Majesty, we've made a breakthrough with the quantum ring analysis. We need you to come to the laboratory immediately. I'm rather busy preparing for an invasion, Doctor, Queen Nyla replied coolly. Your Majesty, with respect, this discovery could change everything. We found a way to establish direct neural contact between dimensions. Both Damon and Queen Nyla turned sharply toward the speaker. Explain, the Queen commanded. Keisha's voice was filled with excitement and fear. The wedding ring isn't just a storage device for memories, it's an active quantum bridge. We believe it can create a temporary neural link that would allow communication between parallel versions of the same person. You mean I could talk to the other Nyla? Queen Nyla asked, her voice barely above a whisper. In theory, yes. But the procedure would be extremely dangerous. The neural patterns involved are unlike anything we've ever seen. Both participants could suffer permanent brain damage, or worse. Queen Nyla stood in silence for several long minutes, staring at Earth below. Her invasion fleet was in perfect position. All she had to do was give the order, and humanity would become part of her empire within days. It was everything she had worked toward for years. There's something else, Damon said gently. If you go through with this invasion, you'll never know if there was another way. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering what that other version of you knew that you don't. And if I refuse the neural link, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I'm making the right choice, she replied. Yes. But at least you'll be making a choice based on knowledge instead of fear. Commander Blake Thompson approached from his station. My Queen, the fleet commanders are requesting invasion orders. Earth's defenses are minimal, we could complete the integration within 72 hours. Queen Nyla looked one more time at the planet below, then at Damon, then at the ring that had started all of this. In another reality, a version of herself had chosen love and partnership. In this reality, she had chosen power and control. But maybe it wasn't too late to change course. Delay the invasion, she said suddenly. My queen. Blake looked shocked. You heard me. All ships are to maintain position but take no aggressive action until further notice. She turned to Damon. If I do this neural link with my alternate self, and if I survive it, will you return to your own dimension? Damon nodded slowly. If that's what you want. But remember, the choice of what kind of ruler you want to be will still be yours to make. Queen Nyla activated her personal communicator. Dr. Robinson, prepare the neural link procedure. I want to speak with myself. As alarms began sounding throughout the fleet about the delayed invasion, Queen Nyla wondered if she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life, or if she was finally about to discover who she was meant to be. The laboratory aboard Queen Nyla's flagship had been transformed into something that looked like a scene from a science fiction movie. Cables and tubes connected advanced Valerian medical equipment to the glowing wedding ring, which now sat at the center of a complex neural interface system. The ring pulsed with increasing intensity as the quantum bridge between dimensions grew stronger. Queen Nyla lay on one of the medical tables, her head surrounded by a crown of delicate sensors that would monitor her brain activity during the procedure. Despite her royal composure, her hands were trembling slightly. She had faced battles, political crises, and the weight of ruling an entire empire, but nothing had prepared her for the possibility of meeting herself. Are you absolutely certain about this, Your Majesty? Dr. Keisha Robinson asked for the third time, checking the readings on her portable scanner. The quantum energies we're dealing with are beyond anything we've ever attempted. We have no idea what the long-term effects might be. I need to know, Queen Nyla replied firmly. I need to understand what I could have become. Captain Damon Williams stood nearby, watching the preparations with a mixture of hope and terror. If something went wrong during this procedure, he might lose both versions of the woman he loved. But if it worked, maybe this Nyla could finally understand what had driven her alternate self to choose cooperation over conquest. Commander Blake Thompson was monitoring the dimensional rift readings from his station. Your Majesty, I must report that the quantum disturbance is becoming more unstable. Our window for Captain Williams to return to his dimension is closing rapidly. We estimate less than 6 hours before the rift collapses permanently. Then we'd better make this work quickly, Queen Nyla said, settling back against the medical table's cushions. Dr. Robinson activated the neural interface, and immediately the room filled with a low humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The wedding ring began spinning slowly in its containment field, surrounded by streams of blue energy that looked like liquid lightning. Neural pathways are connecting, Keisha announced, watching the readouts carefully. Quantum bridge is stabilizing. Your Majesty, you should start feeling the connection any moment now. At first, Queen Nyla felt nothing unusual. Then, gradually, she became aware of something that defied description, like an echo in her mind that wasn't quite her own thoughts, but wasn't entirely foreign either. The sensation grew stronger until suddenly, it felt like someone else was looking out through her eyes. Hello, sister, a gentle voice whispered inside her head. Queen Nyla's eyes went wide. It was her own voice, but speaking with a warmth and tenderness she had never heard from herself. You're real, she whispered back. As real as you are. I've been searching for Damon for so long. When the quantum rift opened, I felt his presence across the dimensional barrier, but I couldn't reach him. Through the neural link, the two versions of Nyla began sharing their experiences and memories. The conquering queen saw glimpses of a life filled with love, laughter, and genuine friendship with people from dozens of different species. She felt what it was like to rule through inspiration rather than fear, to build bridges instead of walls. How do you do it? She asked her alternate self. How do you trust people when you know they might betray you? Because the alternative is living in fear forever, the other Nyla replied gently. Yes, some people will disappoint you. Some will even hurt you. But if you close your heart to everyone, you'll never discover the incredible connections that make life worth living. The warmth and compassion flowing through the neural link was overwhelming. Queen Nyla felt tears running down her cheeks as she experienced emotions she had suppressed for decades. She saw what her empire could become if she chose cooperation over domination, not weaker, but stronger through unity. I can feel your loneliness, the other Nyla said softly. You've built walls so high that nobody can reach you, not even yourself. But it's not too late to tear them down. What about Earth? Queen Nyla asked. My fleet is positioned for invasion. Millions of lives hang in the balance. What does your heart tell you to do? For the first time in years, Queen Nyla actually listened to her heart instead of her fears. The answer was surprisingly clear. I want to try your way. I want to see if love really is stronger than conquest. The neural link began to fade as the quantum energies reached their peak stability. The connection won't last much longer, the other Nyla said urgently. But remember this feeling. Remember that you have a choice in who you become. Will I ever see you again? Queen Nyla asked. Every time you choose compassion over cruelty, you'll be seeing me. We may be in different dimensions, but we're still the same person at heart. As the neural link finally broke, Queen Nyla opened her eyes to find everyone in the laboratory staring at her with concern. She sat up slowly, feeling different somehow, lighter, as if a tremendous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Damon, she said softly. The rift is closing soon. You need to go home to your Nyla. Damon approached the medical table carefully. And what about your Earth? What about the invasion? Queen Nyla smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed her entire face. There isn't going to be an invasion. I'm going to try something much more difficult and much more rewarding. I'm going to try making friends instead of subjects. She stood up and removed the ring from the quantum interface, holding it out to Damon. Take this back to her. Tell her that her sister in another dimension finally learned what love means. But Damon shook his head and gently pushed the ring back toward her. She would want you to keep it. As a reminder that some bonds are strong enough to cross any barrier, even the space between worlds. As alarms sounded throughout the ship indicating the final collapse of the dimensional rift, Queen Nyla watched Damon hurry toward the shuttle bay. Through the neural link, she had felt his love for her alternate self, pure, devoted, and unshakable. Now she understood what she had been missing all these years. Commander Blake, she called out. Cancel all invasion orders. Send a message to Earth requesting a diplomatic summit. Tell them Queen Nyla wishes to discuss a partnership between equals. Blake looked stunned but immediately began relaying the orders. As the Queen walked toward the bridge to address her fleet, she could feel the ring's gentle warmth against her palm. Somewhere in another dimension, another version of herself was probably reuniting with the man she loved under alien stars. Here, in this dimension, Queen Nyla was about to discover that building something together was far more satisfying than tearing it apart. Love, she realized, really could transcend any barrier, even the walls between different versions of reality itself. The invasion fleet slowly began to disperse, replaced by a single diplomatic vessel heading toward Earth. It was the beginning of a new chapter, not just for humanity and the Valerian Empire, but for a queen who had finally learned to choose love over fear.